We lead off with the latest from day 53 of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the growing fears the fate of the city of Mariupol is about to be sealed in one final and potentially bloody firefight. Ukrainian forces have rejected a Russian ultimatum to, quote, surrender or die, the deadline passing hours ago.
Около 1500 наемников прибыли из США, Канады, а также Румынии.
That is a senior Moscow defense official speaking earlier today. He claims intercepted messages suggest there's at least one Canadian among 400 foreign fighters involved in Ukraine's last stand in Mariupol. The group is believed to be cornered in an industrial area, but Ukraine insists there are other pockets of resistance within the city. Ukraine's foreign minister says Mariupol's capture would constitute a red line for peace talks.
The situation in Mariupol is both dire militarily and heartbreaking. The city doesn't exist anymore. It seems from the way Russian army behaves in Mariupol, they decided to raze the city to the ground at any cost.
So for more, let's turn to the CBC's Chris Brown. He's our former Moscow correspondent, and he joins us from Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. So, Chris, just how pivotal could the fall of Mariupol be, and how close is that to happening?
Well, it's extremely important. The question, though, really hasn't been if Mariupol will fall to the Russians, but more so when. This small band of fighters, it could be in the hundreds, perhaps even a couple of thousand, have been holding out for several weeks, but they've been cut off from any reinforcements. They don't have any new food, and they certainly don't have any more weapons. Ukrainians would see this as a heroic defense, but really, you heard the minister say heartbreaking. It's just been a tragic situation all around. Estimates are 20,000 civilians dead, maybe more, and certainly lots of gruesome pictures of bodies in the streets. That ultimatum went today, and really, I don't think anyone's surprised that the fighters there said no, they're going to keep on fighting. This really has been a strategic prize for Russia for a couple of reasons. It would eliminate the last Ukrainian presence on the Sea of Azov. It would hand Russia a new port. It would also allow a bit of a land route to connect between Russian-controlled areas of Donbass and Crimea as well. Russia is acting like this is a big prize that it intends to keep. President Vladimir Zelensky was on American television today talking sort of about that, talking about what might lead to a peace deal, and he suggested that Ukraine would not be prepared to give up any territory. Here's what he said.
In the centuries-old history of Ukraine, there is the story that Ukraine has either taken some territory or needs to give up some territory. Ukraine and the people of our state are absolutely clear. We don't want anyone else's territory, and we are not going to give up our own.
For Russia, this has also come at an incredibly high price, not just in all the soldiers and equipment that's been thrown into Mariupol, but also the loss of its flagship vessel on the Black Sea, the Moskva. It was sunk the other night. Ukraine says it sent it to the bottom of the sea with 2 of its own Neptune missiles.
And Chris, let's talk a little bit more about that, because Russia appears to have intensified its attacks across Ukraine since the sinking of that ship. So where have its targets been today?
We've seen people who have been affected all across eastern Ukraine in cities such as Kharkiv. There were 5 people killed when shelling hit the center of the city, really. Also in the community of Zoloty, that's in the Donbass area, 2 people were killed there. Shortly after 6 a.m. this morning, it appears some cruise missiles, at least one, probably others, that's been the pattern, were fired here at Kyiv in one of the suburbs of Brovary. That's about maybe 20 or so kilometers from where we are now. We went out there, we saw smoldering debris from what Russia claims was an ammunition plant. No way to verify that, but what we can say for certain is that residents up there have lost their electricity, they lost their drinking water because some infrastructure. We saw people lining up, getting water out of jugs, or from a well, I should say, putting them into jugs. Was also quite struck by just how how scared and angry they were. Don't forget, the fighting had just come right to their doorstep and had just stopped 2 weeks ago. I'm sure a lot of people felt that the war for them might be done, and they're suddenly, this morning, this missile lands right in their community. Russia has threatened to keep firing at Kyiv for a couple of reasons. One could be to avenge the loss of their cruiser. It could be to perhaps deter Western nations from sending more and more arms to Ukraine. And of course, Russia has also said it's determined to crush Ukraine's ability to fight this war, which means destroying its important infrastructure.
Okay, Chris, thank you so much for all of this. We really appreciate your time. The CBC's Chris Brown in Kyiv.